Hello. Hey, it's cold. We're going to talk about something that's a little doom and gloom. It's not actually doom and gloom, but we're going to talk about digital intimacy, and we're going to talk about online spaces and search for connection and all of these things. As someone who has particularly thrived in online environments, I have a lot of feelings and thoughts about the digital world, about online spaces, and about intimacy. I was very lucky in the sense that I grew up in a childhood. I had a childhood without extreme technology interfering with the ongoings of my life. Smart boards were like crazy when I was in high school. Maybe like we had 2 smart boards in my elementary school when I was in grade 8, so like more like middle school. But smart boards were crazy. Like we had the classic projectors, like not even like we had like the light box with the mirror. Love those. Snapchat started to become a big thing when I was like in middle school. Phones became even bigger. Like I was the first in my family to get I had a cell phone in grade 8. It had no internet, but it was because all my friends had one, and I was like, please, 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 please. And my parents were like vehemently like, no, because also like we were poor. In elementary school, I remember like we had a shared family computer. Grade 5 onwards, I was like emailing my friends, MSNing my friends, Skyping my friends with our like a detachable fucking webcam. We were finding ways to talk to our friends outside of the landline and outside of school when we couldn't otherwise. And it was a very, very unique time. There's very few people who had the same opportunities for a relationship with technology than the 99ers, which is what I am. I just think that it's a very, like, I had a very, very specific upbringing that made for technology to have a very interesting relationship with. And I think Gen Zers in general have a very different relationship with technology than, say, millennials or Gen X or whatever. Let's talk about the internet. So, obviously, you're on the internet right now. If you're watching me, you're on the internet. We're having this kind of conversation, but let's talk about online spaces. We often talk about online spaces when we talk about certain groups that connect. When I first joined the internet with an intention to share my art, I entered an online art space. It was both commercial and gallery. It wasn't just like, whatever. It was just anyone who liked art, come along. And we can view it in this way where it is a very like me phone person, or we can view it like a geographical space where we're able to connect, right? There's a lot of research that goes around online spaces as these, abstractions of space. If you were to go to an art meet and greet, you're going to meet all these people in your local area. You would do so in a real, a tangible geographical space. Instead, the internet provides this opportunity for these spaces to be abstractions, and not only abstractions, but also just like you can connect from people across the world, and you have this kind of opportunity to unite in this space. And it's important to view the online world as a space because it reminds us of where we are when we're doing this, right? When we're engaging with the internet. Right now, I'm in my room, like my art is around me. I'm doing my art stuff, but I'm also engaging in this online world, right? Like when I'm talking, I'm alone, other than my cat is here. I'm alone, physically alone in this room, but I'm having a conversation with people that are like I'm in Toronto. I don't know, like anywhere in the world you can access this space that I'm creating through this video. And it becomes complicated by things like bots. It becomes complicated by algorithms. It becomes complicated by, the way that people choose to engage with the internet because it lacks the perception of a real person, because it's like, well, it's on my phone, so it's not real. And we know this intrinsically. We know, our bodies know it's not the same thing. So when we're talking about digital intimacy, it's kind of an oxymoron, right? Because we know that we have this idea of like the artificial is digital, right? The digital world is not the same thing as if I were to talk to you in person. If we had this connection, if I could actually see you when I'm having this conversation, you could respond back to me live. It's a very different thing than me talking for a half hour or whatever, and then your opportunity to comment is separate, right? And also, like, I don't get a face for you, and it's very, very different than in person. And we sense that, we do sense that, even though we have this like pseudo sense of connection, and we do get one, like, and I'll talk about that too, but it is different, and we know that it's different. When we talk about the connection we do feel, I think it's an important conversation. I've had friends that have disappeared from the internet entirely. I have friends that are completely untouchable on the internet, which is, their choice, and that's great. And then I also have friends who just have really negative relationships with the internet, and their experience with it is that it's bad for their mental health. They have a hard time balancing it. They really struggle with the fact that they're artificial. They struggle with the algorithm. They struggle with keeping up with people they don't care about. Same reason I don't check Facebook. Same reason I don't check Facebook. And that is all valid and all in its own conversation. But my experience was very different because I was curating a space for a hobby. As a writer and an artist, it was important for me to curate a space that I felt was safe. I wanted it to feel safe. I wanted it to feel like it was a space that I could authentically share, and I felt limited by the fact that, like, previously I had an Instagram that was followed by like my high school peers, my university peers. I was like, bye. And it's nothing against those people. It's just that I didn't feel comfortable because it was not a space that I could curate. And that's the benefit of a digital world, right? Is the curation of space. It's also the disadvantage because we become an echo chamber, and we become limited by our world for, better or worse. There's that aspect of curation. And so for me, when I was hearing my friends who were having negative experiences with social media, I was like, what do you mean? It's great. Like, I get to see all these cool artists. I get to talk to all these cool writers and connect with people that I wouldn't otherwise be able to connect to. They were like, yeah, like that's great, but I don't have that. And that's fucking duh. Like, not duh, like, but like, I didn't see that. I was like, oh, fucking, like, of course, if unless you choose to go and curate an online environment, you are kind of left with the digital world that is just the people that and whatever your interests are as well. But I'm such an advocate for like unfollowing people. Just because you know them doesn't mean you have to keep up with them. And if you have to follow them for whatever social reason, because I get that, mute them. I do that all the time. I mute people all the time. And the main reason is just because, like, I don't want to see it. But also just like, unfollow or don't follow in the first place. The internet is so shallow at the end of the day, and it's such a privilege. I saw this one creator talk about what a privilege it is to be offline, and it's true because we develop so much more intimacy with our lived experiences in the world, and we can use the tools available on the internet, such as YouTube, such as, like I said, I can meet artists, and I can meet writers, and I can do all these things that are great, and I can be inspired by these people that I wouldn't otherwise be able to meet. But you have to take that into the real world. What does intimacy actually mean in the digital world? And again, it's that connection. So we have this connection. We meet people. I've made friends. I have actual friends in real life that I met online. People, like, think about dating apps. Like, there is an intimacy that moves from online spaces into the real world, and into our real lived experiences outside into like planted geographical space rather than abstraction or data centers. But, like, there is online space, and then there's here, and things can migrate. Things can go one of two ways. Like, I have a friend who lives across the country, and I speak predominantly through digital means through her to her. Yeah, like, it is this really valuable tool for keeping in touch and inspiration and meeting new people that you wouldn't otherwise meet, and making connections that are worldwide. But it's not the same thing as meeting in person. And we've found that particularly obvious during the pandemic when our only choice was digital. And it was just like, there's some, that feeling when you like leave a Zoom call and you're like, uh, it is just me here. It is tricky for your brain to like really disconnect, but you kind of innately. Same reason why it's so much more comfortable to do a Zoom call, especially if you like social anxiety. So much more comfortable to do a Zoom call than it is to be in person. I have a friend who she's very extroverted, not like me at all. And she's like me, like, but like, she thrives in person events. I'm good if someone talks to me first, but she was like, I fucking hate a Zoom call. I hate a Zoom call. And she's like, I have such extreme anxiety going into a Zoom call because it's so artificial. And it's true. Like, what makes it comfortable for me is that there it feels less connected than an in-person conversation. Like, I get really anxious in an in-person conversation. I think that, you have more to like look at. You're in a social situation, you're kind of like trapped in like there's safety in an online world, in the sense that like we can become a little bit more or less social. digital intimacy is something that is confusing. Like all things, the internet is valuable in some regards and dangerous in others. And we can have a conversation about AI. We can have a conversation about replacing human connection with the internet. But at the end of the day, when we're using technology, it should be bettering our everyday lives as a whole. Like I don't mean like me or like falling in love with an AI chatbot. Technology should be bettering our lives with people outside. So, like I said, I have a friend who is my lifelong friend who lives across the country, and the only way I can talk to her is through a phone. That's incredible. That's a tool. That's how you use that, right? To stay in touch with someone that you love. Or as a writer and an artist who shares my work online, the way I connect with others is through the online space, but it's not a supplement to it, right? Like I still have to see my friend, not have to. I choose to see my friends. I have to for my mental health because I want to. It's something that I miss, you know? As a human, I miss people. I come to miss people. It took me a while during the pandemic. Let me tell you, it took me like, to be fair, let me start this with this. I have a giant ass family. Okay, I'm one of six. Okay, one of six, like in my family, 4 kids. No shortage of people around. It took me like 13 months to be like, damn, I'm going crazy. Damn, I'm going nuts. This is a lot. But yeah, I think that Gen Z also on a whole, like I hear so much conversation about the online world. I hear so much conversation about feeling isolated and lonely, and we're in a loneliness epidemic. Part it's because of the individualistic society we have that we've fostered and we've nurtured to the point of it's never been good, but now it's just like it's our own detriment is this individualistic culture. And then on top of that, we also have the digital world, which affirms and reaffirms over and over again that kind of like main character syndrome. We're talking about like just it's a different culture online, right? Like same thing like when you hear someone reference like a brain rot kind of thing in person, you're like, whoa. It's the same reason why when you're watching a movie and they reference like a TikTok, you're like, because it's abnormal, right? Like they're so segmented. The online world is so segmented from in person. And like I said, like they can become valuable to one another when we use our online spaces to encourage people to remain connected, when we use our online spaces to foster genuine connections outside of like staying online or to maintain relationships that have had to become online. It's been helpful if you're a creator. It's helpful if you're trying to help people that you couldn't otherwise reach in using these spaces to find people. It's what you do after that it becomes all the more meaningful. If I find all these people and I just like don't do anything with it, I might feel hollow. Like I feel good when I'm writing and I'm sharing and I'm talking to people and people are talking to me and they're sharing and I'm getting to like consume other writers' work. I'm able to be inspired by another artist. I'm able to meet artists around the world. I'm able to have these connections. That's when it becomes super, super valuable. And you can do that. Like whatever hobby you have, I totally recommend, not even for the sake of like monetization, just like finding like-minded people. Like it's so important. And obviously finding like-minded people, immediately my brain goes to like in university. I graduated high school in like 2017, so this is like there's a peak of this kind of there's this the rumblings of the alt-right kind of starting to take a little bit more of a grip. Like there's the rise of Jordan Peterson, which occurred when I was in university. My university, I went to Laurier, had a huge scandal involving Jordan Peterson. It was really just this kind of momentum building for the alt right, especially here in Canada. These online spaces can become very dangerous, and we had conversations with certain experts would come into our like political science classes, and they would talk about the rise of alt right in online spaces, and how we lose because there's lacking the real face to face thing. We're able to like have these things said in these quote unquote private spaces that are really horrific and bad. And they're bad. And I'm not the kind of person who's usually like, that's good, that's bad. These are bad. And I can say that because they hurt people and they're senseless. They're senseless. And so these conversations are happening online. It becomes more comfortable online. People think that they can just say whatever they want online, especially with the rise of algorithms. We have this kind of cultural momentum that occurs online that then translates. And we're seeing the most overt barbarity. Like it's barbarism. Like there is nothing I could say more about it because it's just hateful. It's just disgusting. Like, because we've utilized digital intimacy in this perverse way, we haven't used it to further connect with people. We've used it to foster division, and we've used connection and connecting with these, people online, to then further divide our communities. That's not what we should be using it for. Duh. That's not what we should be using it for. And just because, Kyle is online, sorry to the Kyles out there, Kyle is online and he's meeting, some other person who's also, like, doing these things in the alt right, then we have a concern. He's finding connection through hate, and then often that manifests through political violence, hate crimes. It's never good. And it's never good because cultural violence is the start of all of it. Cultural violence, for those who don't know, there's three kinds of violence: cultural, structural, and physical. And cultural informs the structural and the physical. So cultural justifies structural violence and justifies physical violence. Structural essentially legalizes the justification. So we don't even need necessarily the cultural justification. Culture informs law because in general people have to agree with the law. There's like a social contract on top of this legal contract, and allows for physical violence, which can occur through the state or through people. It's just physical violence. It's the one we think of, right? And so digital intimacy is this really tough conversation because it has so many webs, or so many parts of this web, world wide web, because there's just so much. We're people. It's another site of knowledge exchange. It's another site of, this conversation, but we lack the human face. So, things that are said to me online would not be said to me face to face. They would not, because people have a sense of what's all right to say. It's only getting worse because we're validating and justifying online behaviors, that these things are being expressed in person. But like, I've had people that have commented like absolutely fucking asshole stuff on my TikToks, for example, and I'll comment back and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't." Like, I've had people straight up apologize because they're just so used to speaking hate into the, like, void, and they forget the humanness. And then there's people who just believe that, they have these kind of horrible, disgusting beliefs about people that are so deeply ingrained at this point that it translates into what they think and act in person. And we're seeing, it's just, especially for, young boys, young men, the online world and fostering digital intimacy online is becoming a perversion of how I use the internet for digital intimacy and connecting with people, especially because I have conversations so often about relationships with our lives, people, communities. I have conversations about intimacy with ourselves and our, very consciousness. And I use digital intimacy, these connections I built with people, with you, with, all of these things, to encourage intimacy in our lived experiences. This same tool is being used to connect with people who are fostering hate and who are taking these digital spaces, this connection that they've built, and fostering division in their communities and in their own fucking heads. First of all, like, again, cultural violence, it's beliefs, it's social mores, it's things that are, you have decided in your head and you believe is acceptable, because morality is just our sense of what is right and wrong. You believe that you're right. You believe that you're right. These are true beliefs, It doesn't mean they're true in, like, capital T true, but to you they are, or to that person they are. And how do you begin, especially with, like, conspiracy theorists, how do you begin to detangle that when not only do we have this division of online spaces, we have this division in real life spaces, and we also have, the division between people and education systems, people and the authority of education and academia. And we have kind of like this shit on nuance, like this bullshit on nuance. Like, you can't, when we have a distrust in research, and we have distrust in what we would call like empirical fact or whatever, it's not the same as critical thinking. It's a dismissal. And so what do you do? I don't know. This is kind of a rant because digital intimacy in a lonely world involves the lonely world. And what is the lonely world? It's this increase in individualism, it's this increase in violence, in cultural violence, in physical and structural violence. It is this increase in outward overt hate. It is this increase in the acceptance of a lack of third spaces. It's an acceptance of a lack of in-person connection. And it's becoming culturally expected that this is just kind of how it is and how it should be, and that it's all right. So when we talk about intimacy, what does it mean in real life? Like I said, I talk a lot about intimacy, and I talk about the intimacy of knowing one another, being known, the intimacy of knowing our lives, our experiences, knowing the world. And a lot of that has to do with knowing its perversions, right? Like knowing that this world is in this digital space is doing this. How do we navigate that? I don't know. Personally, I don't know. But if you're seeking connection, if you're looking for connection and you're searching in online spaces, the way for it to be the most effective, in my opinion, is when it translates into the real world, right? So if you make online friends, see them in person, have conversations with them. We need to look at one another. Like we need, I hate to say it, eye contact. We need eye contact. We need like the physical. We weren't built for the abstraction of space. We weren't built for the abstraction of community, and we weren't built for the way that algorithms divide our attention between groups, because we've built like so many different echo chambers that like I don't know what's going on like so and so's side of the internet. I don't. And what they're being fed is the same thing that I'm being fed, in the sense that like it's tailored based off of their data, based off of their consumption. It's tailored to them, but theirs might be fucked up. I'm seeing like cool tattoo artists, I'm seeing like musicians, I'm seeing like people who are like me, who are just talking about this, who's talking about digital intimacy, who's talking about loneliness, who's talking about the state of the world, who's talking about the way that we can foster connection, the way that we can improve our connections. And then there's people who are talking about hurting one another, and there's people that are connecting over that. And being in university, and this is kind of the age of this rise of alt-right and the concern of online spaces, and reading about social systems that build in digital worlds and how that becomes it's not physical, but it's a space. Like we're meeting there. Where are we meeting? We're not meeting at the mall anymore. Like we're meeting on these online spaces. We're opting out of, and not even by choice, because we're just eradicating third spaces to build things that make money, but because we're normalizing it, and we have this kind of like pseudo connection spaces. We're not fighting for the spaces in person the way that we would if we if we didn't have the internet. We'd be fucked. Like, and also I don't think we would be where we were at, because we just wouldn't, like we wouldn't be able to, like we wouldn't be able to survive. It's the same reason why like you meet more people at a house party than you do at a bar. This became a bigger conversation than I probably needed it to be, but I guess I kind of just want to say that like digital intimacy, if we're going to foster a digital world that gives us what we want, which is connection, which is a place to facilitate and to bring more joy and to bring more a better world, to utilize these kind of mobilization tools, to utilize these ways of finding people that you wouldn't otherwise find, it has to be with a specific intent that is more altruistic than not, And I think we're using digital spaces to not always build intimacy. And it's also, becoming a marketing thing, right? Like how many people are fighting to become influencers? How many people are, doing whatever? And I get it, because it's a new marketplace. It's a new space to sell, right? And that's why it feels icky when you see like an ad and you're like, see ya. It feels icky because you're like, I'm being sold to right now. It's like when you go to like anywhere where there's salespeople and they come up to you right away and you're like, get away from me. Yeah, like get the fuck away from me, please. There's a way, but it involves the individual, and it involves the way we use tools, and it involves also the shifting of these spaces, that it's hard because we have an unbridled, for the most part, internet that allows for violence to occur. It limits certain conversations from happening. So it's still I don't it's tough. It's tough. It's tough. I have no answer. There's someone out there who has a more eloquent, more polished conversation that they could have about this, but this is just food for thought. How can we, if we want connection, use the internet? And it's just again with that intention to build connection outside as well. Like, join Facebook groups for like your neighborhood. Use the internet to find a cyclist club so that you can get doored on the streets of Toronto. Not funny. You can, use the internet to meet people like somewhat close to you. Like, I have friends in Toronto that I met solely online, and I didn't live in Toronto when I met them. And you find these people, and it's funny. The world is small, right? But yeah, it's that. It's what's our goal? Are we using the internet to maintain intimacy that already exists in the real world? Are we using it to build intimacy in the real world? Are we using it to build a community? Are we using it to build connection? Or are we using it to project, find people who agree with my like worst beliefs or whatever? Like, like there are people out there that use like fucking 4chan. Like, like there are people out there that are using the internet, and some of them don't know any better, but also like some of it's pretty fucked up. Like, I don't know how you don't get like concerned. I might be too neurodivergent for that, but I'm just like, what are we doing? What are we doing here, folks? Yeah, I hope this made any sense at all. Wait.